Hello and welcome to ChinnyVision. Tonight there's going to be a rampage somewhere in this town. Okay, I twisted the lyrics there, but Rampage is a 1986 game by Bally Midway. You'll have seen this in the arcades. Of course, all those it's 3-player games, so you can play 3 different people and get a couple of friends along, play the game against each other, and basically beat each other up or play it properly or however you feel. Enormous fun. Starting off on the Spectrum, the first version I had, came on the cover of Your Sinclair, believe it or not. I think it was summer 1991. Published by Activision in the UK. And of course, Activision had gone bust, so presumably Your Sinclair picked the game up fairly cheaply. So you set the controls for the different characters to begin with, and you get the game's code by Bob Pape, who did R-Type on the Spectrum and Amstrad CPC, I believe. Famous name anyway. So off we go, and there are 3 different characters running around. In this case, 2 of them are AI, and I'm on the left. I am George. Now, keep in mind, we do have, as I say, 2 AI players, so it'll be interesting to see how they react and how they play the game. It's a 48K game, so it's, as I say, it's beeper sound effects, but it's all happening here. Smashing up the buildings, people appearing at the windows. Yes, it's very simplified in some respects, but it's jolly good fun. So 2 buildings remaining. Cars and things going past, the helicopters coming past and shooting you, and people waving out the windows. And it's difficult on the Spectrum version. In the arcade, there's more colours and more pixels to see what's going on. So you're not getting a good indication of perhaps what some of these people are or what they're doing. It really is a case of just kind of smash everything. That's the second building down. Now, I believe there's going to be a Rampage film coming out next year. I don't keep up with modern trends. I don't really see why a 1986 arcade game is going to come out as a film. But anyway, so there's water on this level. Down the bottom there, the blue. And one thing to bear in mind about water, although the computer characters walk through the water, in theory, when water hits you, you turn back into a human or will react badly if you get squirted with water by some of the ladies in bathtubs that you knock out of the windows. You generally fall off the building or pause or something happens. But nothing appears to be happening when we're walking through the water on the Spectrum here. That's another building down, and just trying to... It's sometimes difficult to jump on the side of the buildings when you're at the edge of the screen. Some versions let you walk past the edge of the screen over to the other side, some don't. Spectrum does not. Over to the C64, and there are 2 versions for the C64. First of all, we're going to look at the UK version by Activision, same as the Spectrum and Amstrad versions. And it's looking rather good here. The C64's sprites help out the graphics. We've got all 3 playable characters with the AI. Lots of nice little touches. Again, it is still cut down from the arcade version, but nothing significant. If you'd played this on the arcade as a C64 owner, you'd be quite happy with it. As you'd expect, yes, the colours are slightly more muted than the CPC, but it's just as attractive as the CPC version, really, and it is faster and smoother. As I mentioned, there's also a USA version for the C64, and this is a little bit of a disappointment. Suddenly, you've only got 1 playable character. There are no AI monsters there to play with, so if you've only got 1 player, you're playing on your own. Graphics are also a little bit spartan and basic, and just remember this USA C64 version when we come to look at the Amiga version. Bit of a disappointment, especially compared to the UK version. The Atari 8-bit's got a port of this game, and here we are on my 65XE. You'd hope it would look as polished as the C64 versions. It doesn't. You've got these single colour sprites, but they handle fairly well. Gameplay wise, it's pretty good and pretty faithful. It's just aesthetically not as pleasing as it could be. This is also a USA game, by the way. There's no official Atari version, or Atari 8-bit version, produced by Activision in the UK. When your characters get to the top of the buildings, there's a few frames of animation missing, so they suddenly just appear at the top. It's slightly disconcerting. And instead of people appearing in the windows on this version, you just get icons. So you had a question mark there, which I ate for a mystery bonus. Some of these versions give you 3 lives, and or more, I think in a couple of cases. This version is 1 life and everyone's dead. Just 1 life, just got energy, and when you die, that's it. A little person waving out the window there. Another mystery bonus, although I missed that because the building fell down. So you do, I apologise, you do get people waving out the windows on this version, but you've got no idea who they are. There's no, they're not soldiers or people or ladies or anything like you can see on the arcade version. You know, some of looking at the character animations on this version reminds you a little bit of the kind of simplicity you see on the Atari 2600. Over to the Amstrad CPC, lovely loading screen, lovely menu screen here. Someone's done a nice job on these graphics. The Mark Jones on graphics on this version is not the Mark Jones Motion Software, who did a lot of graphics on Ocean Spectrum games, and I think a few Amstrad CPC games as well. I know that because I asked him. Apparently there were 2 Mark Joneses working in the UK computer industry, both doing 8-bit graphics. Over this, on the CPC, lovely colourful graphics, and all 3 characters. Why are the C64 lacking the characters? Because on the Amstrad, here we've got all 3. And yeah, it's slower than the Atari Spectrum and C64 versions, but it looks really nice. And you've got music, and it's not the Rampage music either. Thanks to Larry Bundy Jr., who pointed out that this is the music from the arcade game Trojan. And it wasn't even Activision who apparently had the rights to Trojan. It was Elite, and they never actually released a game in the end. So, quite what the music from the Trojan arcade game is doing on the Amstrad CPC version of Rampage, goodness only knows. Also sounds similar to the music from Solomon's Key, so I'm guessing it's probably the same composer. Forwarded it on, and if I've got one criticism of the Amstrad version, that is that the AI is a little bit stupid. They don't always immediately go straight to their task. They can stand around and just do stupid things, or... I mean, it's a small niggle. On the Spectrum version, it seems to get it right. On the Amstrad version, it just seems to be a little bit niggly. And if you're wondering, I'm playing Ralph, the blue monster, on the Amstrad. And you can tell that because I'm the only one doing anything sensible. The George the Gorilla's just supposed to be jumping around doing goodness knows what. And while it's not out yet, I'll give a quick plug to the 2018, yes I said it, 2018 ChinnyVision calendar, which will be available shortly from the ChinnyVision website, ChinnyVision.com, and that will feature Rampage. And it's quite a bit of slowdown when the buildings collapse on the Amstrad as well. And when you touch the water, the right thing happens, you disappear. So they get that right. I don't like these between-level graphics on the Amstrad. The font is horrific. Why don't we have the proper newspaper headlines type things? And why is the font so bad? Another thing on the Amstrad, although these graphics are lovely, when you've got lots of buildings going on, they do get lost in each other. There's 3 buildings, I can't tell, 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings there. It's not a huge issue, but should be mentioned. It just seems to be a thing that doesn't seem to impact the other versions. But these are all minor niggles. This Amstrad version really is a triumph. It looks the part, it plays the part. Yes, there's a little bit of slowdown. Yes, some of those background graphics are a little bit indistinct, but no, very, very enjoyable. Goodness knows how many years I've had Rampage for the Sega Master System sitting on my shelf, and I've probably played it once, so let's give it another go and see how faithful this is to the arcade. And yeah, this is looking very nice, although, yep, only George is playing this. There's no AI characters, it's just me. I don't know if that's because extra sprites would cause a lot of flickering on the Master System, or they just couldn't be bothered to program the AI. There seems to be a massive inconsistency between some of the versions that get the AI and all 3 playable characters going on at once, and the things like the C64 and Master System that don't. The character animation is very pleasing on the Master System, and everything is very fluid as well. And it's quite nice coming over from the Amstrad, where it's very nice, but perhaps lacked a little bit of fluidity because of that slight slowing down. And on the Master System, you do get distinct graphics of what's coming up the windows. There's a lady there, which I've eaten, but you can actually see that stuff, which is nice because of the Master System's enhanced palette. Of course, it's got more colours than the C64, the Spectrum, or even the Amstrad. And you can even see things when you smash the buildings, the bathrooms as well, which are from the arcade. And you can see it when it's soldiers throwing things out of view out of the left-hand building there. And the tank, when the tanks shoot at you, they shoot things that really do literally knock you for 6. So it's best to punch the tanks before they get a chance to fire on you. In all, it's all very nice here on the Master System. A very nice port. It's a shame the other 2 characters aren't playing alongside you. But there is a 2-player option, so at least you can play with a friend. It's just that lack of AI. So what do the 16-bits have for us? Hopefully they've got all 3 playable characters going on at the same time. So over to the Amiga. And press 1, 2, or 3 to start the game on the Amiga. And you do get this from the arcade, so all the details. And no, on the Amiga, we only have George going on. You can only play with 2 or 3 characters if you have other people to play with. What a disappointment on the Amiga. I've checked, and I don't think I'm missing anything here. Apologies if I had, but I can't see a way to make all 3, or get the other 2 players on as AI. Sound effects are nice and beefy. Graphics are a little bit smaller than I would expect. Doesn't bode well for the ST version if the Amiga version is looking this drab. I do like the fluidity though on this version of the playable character, but you'd expect that on the 16-bits really, wouldn't you? Apart from a slightly higher resolution, this really isn't offering that much more over the Sega Master System version, which of course is an 8-bit. Over to the ST, and don't have high hopes for this after the Amiga version, but we'll see. A jolly nice AY tune on the menu screen, and you can select the characters. So, oh, hang on, right, okay. So Ralph is a computer. Lizzie is currently selected as keyboard, and I'm joystick 1. So let's see how we go. Oh. Right, so the AI is working. So I've got, this is very nice. This isn't the Amiga version, is it? This has got completely different graphics. This is the closest I've seen to the arcade. Compacted down screen slightly because of the larger sprites, but it plays very, very well. It looks and sounds like the arcade. And you get a sense of scale of the monsters as well. The monsters are big. They're supposed to be big. In some of the other versions, they feel very small compared to the size of the buildings. But actually, if you look at George there, he's nearly as tall as the building he's trying to smash. That's much more like the arcade. This is very pleasing. And jumping into the water there, yeah, you turn back into a human. And this is very nice. The computer AI is sometimes a little bit dumb, but not too bad. Not quite as not quite the same problems you had on the Amstrad version. Although it's minor niggles. It's not a huge issue. I'm perhaps making it sound like it is. The computer AI is never going to be as good as playing with an actual human being. And yes, I have put the ST version in front of actual human beings. A 7 and a 10-year-old playing Rampage for about 40 minutes the other Saturday night, and they enjoyed it immensely, and all on the Atari ST. So that's looking across most of the versions of Rampage. Spectrum version is an absolute triumph. Really enjoy playing with the AI characters. It's colourful, it's playable, yes, it's cut down, but for Speccy owners, really good fun. C64 version, well, it's a tale of two halves. UK version is superb, looks really good, 3 playable characters. USA version, big disappointment, slightly ugly and Spartan graphics and no AI, so if you're playing on your own, there are no other monsters on the screen. Atari 8-bit version plays pretty well, even if it looks a little bit drab. I just think they might have put a little bit more effort into those sprites, but perhaps that's technical limitations. Is it as good as the Spectrum version? Not sure. Amstrad CPC version is great. Yes, it's a little bit slow. I do have minor niggles, but the only reason I have minor niggles is because the rest of the game is so good. For me, of the main 3 8-bit micros, the Amstrad version is the best. Over to the consoles, and the Sega Master System version looks really good, really fluid, really arcade. Not arcade perfect, but close as you can expect an 8-bit machine to be to the arcade. But it lacks the other 2 players as AI. 16-bit versions, Amiga version, massive, massive letdown. What was going on? You would expect the Amiga version and the ST version to be the same in this era. They've clearly been done by separate coding teams. The Amiga version, I'm afraid, is a bit of a disaster. The ST version is absolutely superb. Really, really good. As good an arcade conversion as you could expect in this era for a home machine. It's all there. It's got the scale of the monsters. It's got the fun. You can sit kids down today with this ST version, and I can tell you this because I did it last Saturday night, they will absolutely love it and will complain when they're told they can no longer play it because they've got to go to bed. That, for me, is the real proof that the ST version of Rampage is an absolute classic.